Do you agree with that Jen's message was to you, frankly, that you, the private sector, but also those outside of cybersecurity, need to be doing a lot more?
Yeah, it might have been more to Microsoft, but you have to ask her in terms of building secure software by design. But I think as an industry, we have to have security built by design. And we're at CES, and I think a big part of it is there are many different consumer devices that come to the consumer not secure out of the box and not looked after for their lifetime. And that becomes problematic and creates risk in the environment.
Microsoft, what did you mean by that?
Well, when you look at the technologies that are in play and a lot of the exploits that happen, they're on Microsoft technologies. I mean, Patch Tuesday is, how many vulnerabilities can we patch? So many of the big breaches that we've investigated and report on have exploited Microsoft technology. So I think what she was saying, and I was on the panel with her today,
yes, you were, yeah.
Right, which was like, you can't blame the victim. In other crimes, we don't blame the victim. Right? In cybersecurity, it's like, well, they didn't patch, they didn't do this. Well, how did that vulnerability get there in the first place? And creating secure software by design is really important for the consumer and the enterprise.
George, let's talk a little bit about safety and indeed where the threats are indeed coming from. For 2023, are we seeing anything novel, anything new, any new kind of attackers, any new players within this game?
Well, when we think about 2023 and a challenging macro environment, what we have to look at is during a recession, and I've been through many of them, I've been doing security for a long time, cyber adversaries tend to get more active. Cybercrime goes up. Why? Because we've seen it. You've reported on the layoffs in tech and in other places. Whenever people are coming and going, there's always an opportunity to abuse that identity. When people aren't minding, quote, the store and looking after systems, there's opportunity for these e-crime actors. So we think it's even more important as we get into a challenging environment that cybersecurity is front and center for large and small companies, and of course the consumer.
I want to ask you the same question I asked Jen, which is where are the threats coming from? I asked about the war in Ukraine and whether there was a direct correlation with the war in Ukraine and a ramp up in activity in ransomware. As an example, she said no, that's not the case. But we keep hearing, well, the threat's there. That's what's motivating her to speak. So where are they coming from, the threats?
Well, we break the threat actors into three different groups. We have nation-state actors, we have e-crime, and we have hacktivism. Right, just a simple way to think about it. So the nation-state actors, Russia, China, North Korea, et cetera, Iran, are always going to be active. Whether it's good times, bad times, war, not war, they're always going to be out there. And when we think about Russia, I would say many thought there would be more activity around the Ukraine conflict, but it's not like Russia forgot what they were doing. They're still very active in this environment and collecting information, maybe not as destructive as we thought. Then you turn to e-crime. E-crime is a huge business. Jen talked about it. It's really ransomware as a service, e-crime as a service. You really don't need to understand anything almost about technology. You can buy access from an access broker. You can buy a ransomware from a ransomware as a service. By the way, there's a revenue share on that as well. They've got their own business model, so they actually collect a piece of that revenue. And then at the end of the day, you just assemble it together, you execute your campaign, and you can make a lot of money without a lot of risk.
George, aside from attackers' own revenue streams, talk to us about yours, because as people do dial back spending, R&D, and maybe their own cybersecurity during a period of downturn, we have seen, for example, your own revenue at CrowdStrike hit by that. Are you feeling that the worst is over? Are you worried as you go into 2023?
Well, when we think about when we go into 2023, obviously many companies have seen headwinds, lengthening sales cycle, those sort of things. As other companies, enterprise, SMBs, evaluate their own budgets. But at the end of the day, when I think about security, it is a very resilient industry. And for me, the hierarchy of needs and corporate needs, it's like shelter. You have to have security, whether by regulation or by business resiliency. And one of the things that Jen and I spoke about was really that it's a board issue. The board is looking at business resiliency, not just the annoyance of a single computer being impacted.